She saved his life once, but when fate trapped her behind palace walls, he had to risk everything to return the favor. In a kingdom ruled by power and gold, a fearless commoner and a sorrowful duchess are bound by one unforgettable moment on a lonely hill. When the duke dies and a dark new heir rises, Maya finds herself caged in a royal prison once more. But William, a man scarred by his past, returns this time not to steal gold, but to steal her freedom. A story of forbidden love, quiet rebellion, and a goodbye that will shatter your heart. The night was ink-dark and bitterly cold. The wind whistled through the bare trees lining the narrow road, whispering secrets of the lonely moors. Though the snow hadn't yet begun to fall, the frost had already kissed every leaf, every stone, turning the world into a quiet painting of winter's breath. A lone carriage rattled swiftly along the deserted woodland path, its wheels creaking over fallen leaves and frozen earth. Lanterns on either side flickered like tiny stars, casting golden glimmers onto the dark terrain. Inside the carriage, cushioned in velvet and silence, sat a woman of noble birth, Duchess Maya Fernandes, the fairest lady in the county, draped in layers of royal blue satin, her gloved hands resting gently on her lap. Her eyes, deep and striking, were closed, as if in prayer or weariness. She had just left the town and was returning to her cold, grand estate. The hour was late, and her heart was heavier than the night itself. Suddenly, the carriage halted. The horses neighed, the wheels screeched softly into the dirt, and the coachman gasped. Maya's eyes snapped open. "What's happened?" she asked softly, her voice still calm but alert. The coachman stepped down quickly and disappeared into the shadows. Moments later, he returned, breath short and voice trembling. "Your Grace," he whispered through the curtain, "there's a blockade on the road, and men armed, the raiders. They've stopped us. Their leader, he's not backing away. He looks furious. He wants to loot." Maya's expression remained unreadable, but a faint, sorrowful smile curved her lips. Not of fear, of something else, something long buried. She reached out, pulled back the curtain just a little and looked outside. The moon hung low behind a veil of clouds, casting a pale light over the frozen road. And there, standing firm before the carriage, was a young man, tall, proud, dressed in an old, white tunic and leather boots that had seen years of struggle. His jaw clenched, his arms stiff at his sides. His eyes burned not with greed, but with a fire far deeper. William, a man born of pain, shaped by injustice, raised in hunger. Once a dreamer, now a fighter. The Duchess lowered the curtain. Her voice carried through it, calm yet commanding. "Tell him to come closer." The coachman hesitated, then obeyed. He stepped toward the man with his hands raised. "The lady wishes to speak." William narrowed his eyes but stepped forward, one hand resting near the hilt of his sword. His boots crunched over the frozen earth as he neared the carriage. Inside, Maya sat straight, still hidden behind the curtain, but her voice met him like silk over steel. "What do you want?" she asked softly. "Gold," he said, his voice steady but rough. "From those who live in palaces, from those who dine while others starve. I take nothing from the poor. I am not a thief, I am a reminder." Maya's voice grew a touch colder. "And do you think raiding women on night roads makes you noble?" "I raid only the kingdom's rot," he replied. "If you ride in a gold-laced carriage, then you are part of it." A pause. "Even if the woman inside it is just as imprisoned as the peasants you claim to protect." William stiffened. There was something in her tone. Not pride, not arrogance, pain. "Who are you?" he asked. And then the curtain shifted, just slightly, just enough for the moonlight to touch her face. The black veil in her hair shimmered faintly, and right in its center, a single strand of white pearls sparkled like frost on midnight silk. William froze. His breath caught. That strand? His eyes locked on it, in a flash. A memory, a distant hilltop. Blood, cold, and her. No, he wouldn't let himself remember it fully. Not now. He took a shaky step back. Inside the carriage, Maya watched through the slit in the curtain. She saw the way his body shifted, the way his anger melted into something softer, sadder. A knowing smile formed on her lips. She let the curtain fall. "He won't take anything," she said gently to the coachman, "because long ago I gave him something, and he hasn't repaid that debt yet." The coachman blinked. "Go on, drive." The carriage began to move again, slow at first, then faster, until the wheels once again echoed through the trees. William remained still, eyes on the fading lanterns. Behind him, his companions murmured in frustration. "Why did you let her go?" one of them hissed. But he didn't answer. His eyes were distant, lost in time. The woman in the carriage, the pearls in her hair. His fists clenched as the night closed in around him. He said nothing, but his heart whispered something old, something aching. The carriage disappeared into the fog, and William remembered. "Why did you let her go, William?" The furious voice of one of his companions pierced the silence. Another man stepped forward, his boots crunching over the frostbitten earth. "She was a duchess," he spat, "the richest woman in this cursed state. You let her pass like a queen on a parade. Are we here to fight or to fold like beggars?" William didn't speak. He stood there, rigid and cold, as if carved from the very stone beneath his boots. His jaw was clenched, his breath steady. Only his eyes betrayed, him haunted, distant, lost in a memory far from this night. The others grumbled and walked away, leaving him in the silver light of the waning moon. His gaze lingered on the road the carriage had taken, swallowed now by fog and forest. A shadow flickered in his mind. A girl, a hill, a thread of white pearls in her black hair. And suddenly, he was no longer standing on a winter road. He was back, a year ago, in the green and silent highlands where the world was colder but somehow gentler, and his heart still beat with purpose. It had been a crisp morning. William, then nothing more than a humble letter runner, had taken the long climb into the misty hill region to deliver a sealed letter to a government official residing in a royal lodge. He rode alone, his brown horse trotting cautiously along the narrow cliffside trail. The trees were taller there, the wind sharper, the skies always pale and watchful, but fate had its own plan. The path grew slick, his horse neighed uneasily. One misstep, one loosened patch of earth, and the beast reared back in panic. Easy. Too late. The horse stumbled. William's body flew forward. His shoulder crashed against a rock. He tumbled down the slope, pain tearing through him like lightning. His head struck the cold ground, and the world spun violently. He rolled and rolled, until finally he lay crumpled at the base of the hill. His vision blurred. Blood soaked through the sleeve of his shirt, warm against the bitter cold. His leg throbbed. His chest burned. And worst of all, he couldn't move. He tried. Once, twice, but his body refused. The trees above him swayed in silence. Dusk was falling. The cold bit deeper. So this is how it ends, he thought. Alone, forgotten. Nothing but a name in the wind. He closed his eyes, his breath slowing, his skin pale. But then, footsteps. Soft, graceful. He opened his eyes slowly, painfully. A figure emerged from the trees. A woman, cloaked in flowing black, her dark hair tumbling down her back like ink. She walked as if she were part of the forest untouched, elegant, proud. At her side trotted a snow-white horse, its reins held loosely in her gloved hand. She came closer, her heels silent against the frost. William's breath caught. She wasn't from the village. No, she looked different. A noblewoman, maybe even royalty. She had the look of someone too refined for dirt, yet here she was, kneeling beside him in the mud. Her hands, warm and soft, gently examined the bleeding wound on his head and arm. Her brows furrowed with frustration, not worry, and then her scarf, a beautiful, embroidered piece wrapped around her slender neck. She untied it and pressed it firmly to his shoulder, wrapping it with care and unexpected skill. "I don't want to help you," she murmured coldly. Her voice was soft but layered with pain. "No man ever truly deserves it, but something tells me I should." He stared at her, her lips, her jawline. But more than anything, he saw the strand of white pearls nestled in the thick of her black hair. They shimmered in the golden twilight like starlight woven into silk. That image, he would never forget it. Her touch slowed the bleeding. Her scarf stayed firm. And then she stood. "Remember this," she said, her eyes locked with his. "Not because you owe me, but because I did what I didn't want to do." Then she turned, gracefully, mounted her horse, and vanished into the woods. William's eyes closed. Darkness returned. He drifted into nothingness. Morning came. The first thing he felt was the breeze, then pain, then life. He opened his eyes, blinking against the cold dawn light. Birds chirped somewhere high in the trees. His shoulder still ached, but the bleeding had stopped. Her scarf was tied perfectly, stained with his blood, and next to him stood a horse, a magnificent, fresh stallion, tall, strong, snow-white, saddled. It wasn't his, it was hers. She had left it, for him, a gift, a silent message. A woman who claimed she didn't want to help, but did. With shaking legs, William rose. He touched the scarf tied to his shoulder. He looked up at the mountain path she had vanished into. Then he climbed into the saddle and rode home. That same week, in his village, celebrations filled the air. Flowers hung from the balconies. Bells chimed. Banners danced in the wind. The new duke had taken the throne, and within days his grand wedding was to be held. The bride, a foreign duchess, mysterious, beautiful. Rumors said she had arrived months ago under secret circumstances, that she had been chosen for alliance, not love. The people cheered, but William didn't. He stood in the shadows of the marketplace, watching the banners flutter, watching the rich dine and drink while children begged in the mud. The woman he had seen on the hill had vanished from his life, but the pearls in her hair lived in his memory. That kindness, that strength, that pain. The sun was setting behind the hills when William reached home. His boots were covered in dust. His heart was heavy. He had a strange feeling in his chest all day. As he walked through the broken wooden gate, everything fell silent. Smoke. His eyes caught it first, dark smoke rising from the back of the house. "Mother," he shouted, running inside. The small cottage was dark. He pushed open the door. The smell of something burnt hit his nose. He rushed to the back room. There, lying on the floor, was his old mother, pale, weak, barely breathing. "Mother," he dropped beside her, holding her cold hand. She looked at him with tired eyes. "Will, they burned it? Our land, our wheat." "Who?" His voice cracked. She took a slow breath. "The Duke's men, last night. They said it belonged to His Grace now." William couldn't breathe. His heart pounded. He looked outside. The small wheat field behind their house, the only thing they owned, was gone. Black ash, empty, dead. His fists clenched. Just then, his close friend Thomas arrived. He had heard about the fire. He was angry too. "William, this is too much. First the taxes, now this. When will it end?" William stood silently. Thomas said, "Today is the Duke's wedding. Let's go to the castle. Let's ask him. He must listen." William nodded. Later that night, they reached at the castle. The castle was glowing. Lights everywhere, music, laughter. Gold carriages stood outside. It was a celebration. But for William and Thomas, it was the day their lives had fallen apart. They walked through the crowd. Guards stopped them. "We want to speak to the Duke," William said. "His Grace is busy," a guard replied coldly. "He burned our land." Thomas shouted, "He must hear us." Another guard pushed them. "Get out." Before they could say more, they were thrown out like dirt. As William got up from the ground, brushing the dust off his coat, he looked up. That's when he saw her, standing on the castle balcony, behind a veil, wearing a golden dress, the Duke's new bride. Her face was hidden, but her beauty still shined. Her clothes sparkled under the lights. Her soft movements, her grace, everything felt royal. But William's heart burned with rage. This woman just arrived and she's covered in gold. And my mother lies on the floor, dying. My land is ash. He looked around, so many poor people working just to survive. And here, a wedding that cost more than all their lives. Something broke inside him. The kind-hearted young man that believed in justice died that night. A few days later, the village was quiet, but something had changed. That night, William sat in the dark with Thomas and a few other young men. "We waited for kindness," William said. "We waited for justice. But the Duke will never give it. What do we do now?" someone asked. William's eyes were cold. "We take it." They all looked at him. "We take back what's ours. If they won't feed us, we take their food. If they burn our land, we burn their gold." Thomas smiled slowly. "We become the storm." And so it began. That night, in black clothes and covered faces, they took their horses and rode into the night. They stopped a rich merchant coming from the castle. They took the gold, the jewels, the silks, but they didn't keep them. They gave the coins to widows. They bought food for the hungry. Every night, the same. They robbed only the rich, only those loyal to the Duke. The masked riders became a legend. No one knew who they were. To the village, William was still the same quiet boy who worked the fields. But at night, he was the leader of a silent war. And the Duke, he was afraid. His guards doubled. His castle walls grew taller. But the fear spread. Whispers of the Black Riders reached even the royal court. Every wedding guest who left the castle after sunset was robbed. Every tax collector sent to the village vanished. But William's face was never seen. He was a shadow. a ghost. Yet in his heart, one image never faded, the veiled bride in gold, the symbol of everything he had lost, and everything he would fight against. The echo of hooves had long faded. Morning light was slowly pouring into the dark corners of the deserted road. William stood still, eyes lingering where the royal carriage had disappeared into the mist. A slow breath escaped his chest. She was gone, but this time he knew who she was. The Duchess, the girl from the hill, the same girl who had risked everything to save a stranger him, who had left behind her white horse and vanished into the fog. The same girl whose long hair was laced with a single strand of white pearls. He could still see her in flashes, her hands shaking as she treated his wound. And now she belonged to the palace. The same palace he despised. He turned around slowly, his jaw clenched. His memories burned like fire behind his eyes. He hadn't wanted to see her again. Not like this. Not as the wife of the man who ruled this kingdom with an iron heart. But fate had a way of crossing paths you tried to avoid. He looked up at the distant view of the grand palace. Its walls stood tall and cold like it had never known love. He wanted to see her again just once. He needed to ask her, "Why? Why did you save me?" And, as if destiny was listening, a moment later, the tall gates of the palace creaked open. 2 guards rushed out, whispering urgently to each other. "We need a man, young and strong, now. The chandelier chain broke. The main hall is a mess. The Duke is furious." William didn't wait. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I can help." The guards turned to him, suspicious eyes scanning his clothes. But there was no time. "Come," one of them said. "Don't speak, just work." As they walked through the massive gate, William's heartbeat grew heavy. Every step pulled him deeper into a place he never imagined entering again. And then fate gave him more. "The Duchess's chamber," said the old servant, waving a hand. "That's where the broken railing is. Fix it and don't make noise." "She's resting." William's chest tightened. The Duchess. She had a name now, a title. But for him, she was still the girl from the hill. His girl with white pearls in her hair. He followed the servants silently. His boots echoed against marble floors as golden curtains swayed in the morning breeze. They stopped in front of a grand door. The servant pushed it open. Inside, the room smelled like jasmine and quiet sorrow. Soft light filtered through long curtains. A fireplace flickered in one corner. And she was there, sitting silently in front of the mirror, her back to him, her dark hair cascading like velvet down her back. Her eyes, lost in thought, stared into the mirror but saw nothing. William froze. His tools slipped slightly in his hand. For a long second, he just watched her reflection. She hadn't changed. No, she had become even more beautiful, more haunted, more distant. His voice came out softer than he expected. "You remember me?" She didn't turn, but her eyes blinked. Slowly, from the hill, he added, "You saved me." Her hand paused mid-air, resting against her hair. "I never forgot," she whispered. William took a step forward. "Why did you help me?" Her reflection finally turned slightly, just enough for him to see the pain behind her eyes. "Because you looked like someone who'd already lost too much." Silence filled the room. A silence that said more than any words ever could. He wanted to say her name, but he didn't know what it was. He only knew the girl from that cold morning, her courage, her kindness, the way she trembled when she let him go. "You're married to him," he finally said. "To the Duke." She nodded slowly. I didn't have a choice. William's jaw clenched. Does anyone in this kingdom ever get one? She finally turned her full face toward him. Her eyes shimmered like glass, holding back something deep and old. I'm trapped, William. His name sounded like a song on her lips. He stepped closer, then let me break the lock. Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed through the palace. It was followed by a scream. A servant's voice panicked, breathless, called out from the corridor. The Duke. The Duchess shot up from her seat, her face pale. She rushed past William without another word, pulling her dress as she ran. William followed, confused and alarmed. They rushed down the stairs where a crowd had gathered, and there at the bottom of the great staircase lay the Duke. His head was bleeding. Blood pooled across the white marble like spilled ink. Someone whispered, "He fell. He slipped." But no one moved. No one dared touch him. The Duchess dropped to her knees beside him. Her fingers shook as they touched his cheek. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her husband was gone. Dead. A strange silence overtook the palace. It felt like time itself had stopped to mourn or, perhaps, to breathe. William stood behind her, stunned. Everything had changed in a single second. The man who ruled this place, who ruled her, was no more. He wanted to comfort her, but didn't know how. Would she cry? Would she scream? Or was this freedom? She slowly looked back at William. Her eyes weren't wet, but they weren't dry either, just tired. And in the very next moment, she turned and disappeared into the palace, swallowed by the shadows of its towering walls, where the Duke's lifeless body was being carefully lifted and carried away. William stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the fading silhouette of the woman who had just walked back into a world of chains. The palace was preparing for the Duke's final rites. Silence draped the air like a heavy curtain. Without a word, William turned away. He didn't know if he would ever see Maya again, but he knew one thing: she would never leave his heart now. Her words echoed in his mind like a whisper carved into stone. This place is a prison for me. He could still hear the sorrow in her voice. With a long, heavy breath, William stepped away from the palace gates and vanished into the morning light. The kingdom was draped in mourning. After the sudden death of the Duke, the air in the state turned heavy with grief. Black flags waved from palace towers, and the roads leading to the royal court were filled with visiting nobles, wealthy men and women dressed in somber silks, bringing their condolences but whispering politics in every corner. William, however, remained quiet. He walked among the people, his shoulders tense, his eyes distant. His friends didn't understand. "This is the perfect time," one of them whispered. "The Duke is gone. The palace is full of royals, jewels, gold, nobles with fat purses and loose pockets." Another nodded eagerly. "One slip into the ballroom and we could walk out rich. You know it." But William didn't respond. Instead, he turned to them, his voice sharp, controlled. "Is that all you think about? Even in a house of death, you think of stealing." His words cut through the night like a blade. His companions fell silent. Their faces dropped. They didn't speak again. They had never seen him like this. That night, when darkness fully claimed the sky, William found himself once more standing outside the palace walls. The candles inside flickered softly, tiny dots of light glowing like fireflies in the windows. But one window in particular drew his eyes. The one on the east side, her window. He stood in the shadows, watching. And suddenly he saw her. The window creaked open, and Maya stepped forward. Her long dark hair fell around her shoulders, and the white dress she wore shimmered like moonlight. In her hair, the same strand of white pearls sparkled gently just as it had on the hill. She wasn't asleep. She was awake, alone, and she looked lost. Her silhouette framed in that soft light stole his breath away. William took only a second to decide. Without a sound, he crossed the garden, climbed the outer stone wall, and scaled the narrow ledge that led to her window. By the time he reached it, she had already turned away. He gently pushed the wooden frame open and stepped inside. She stood in the center of the room, her back to him. But she felt his presence. She spun around, her eyes wide in shock, wet with tears. "How dare you come here?" she gasped, her voice trembling. "How did you? Why are you?" William raised his hands slowly. "Don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" she demanded, stepping back. "I needed to know," he said softly, "why you're still here. You're free now. The Duke is gone. No one can keep you here anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her chest rose and fell as if she'd been holding in 1,000 truths for far too long. And then she broke. Tears filled her eyes, and she dropped to the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I may be rich," she sobbed, "but I am chained in gold. You don't understand, William. I don't belong to this palace. I'm not even from this kingdom." William stepped closer, his heart thudding. "I'm from another land," she whispered. "A small royal state in the east. My parents, they sold me. The Duke offered them power, land, soldiers. In exchange, they gave him me." William's jaw tightened. "I was a deal, a token, a bride with no choice." She looked up at him then, her eyes shining with pain. "And now that the Duke is gone, his younger brother, he's next in line. He wants the crown, and he wants me." William's entire body went still. "The coronation is tomorrow," she said shakily. "And during that ceremony, I'll be announced as his wife." William's fists clenched. His blood burned in his veins. "I won't let that happen." She looked at him, searching his face. "You'll stop it. How? You're just one man." He knelt in front of her, gently holding her hands. "I don't know how," he whispered, "but I swear to you, Maya, I'll get you out of here. I'll take you somewhere safe. You'll never be a prisoner again." Her lip trembled. "Do you mean it?" He nodded. "With everything I am." A fragile smile touched her lips, full of tears and hope. Their fingers tangled, their foreheads touched, and for a brief, stolen moment, time stood still. Outside, the palace continued to mourn the death of a duke. But inside this quiet room, something far greater had begun. The awakening of a forbidden love, and a vow that would change both their fates forever. The night was heavy with silence. In a dimly lit wooden room at the edge of the village, William lay alone on his narrow bed. The ceiling above him was cracked, the walls bare, but it wasn't the cold that kept him awake. It was everything else. His chest rose and fell slowly, burdened by the weight of his thoughts. "Why am I still doing this?" he wondered. Stealing, robbing, running. For what? Nothing had changed in the world. The rich still ruled. The poor still begged. The powerful still bought lives like hers. But he was the one losing himself. He closed his eyes, and her face returned. Maya, the sorrow in her eyes, the silent scream in her heart. The way she stood in the palace draped in gold, surrounded by grandeur, yet looked more imprisoned than ever. She had everything, and nothing, and it hit him like a storm. Wealth means nothing if it doesn't bring peace. He sat up suddenly, breath shallow. He couldn't just lie there. Not tonight, because tomorrow she would be gone. A crown on her head, a collar around her heart. And he would never forgive himself. That night, while the entire village gathered near the palace to witness the coronation, William moved through the shadows. Torches lit the grand courtyard. Drums echoed, trumpets blared. Inside the palace, nobles lined the grand hall, dressed in silks and smiles. At the center of it all stood the Duke's younger brother, draped in royal red, ready to wear the crown. In her chamber, Maya stood still, like a marble statue carved from pain. She wore a breathtaking dress of gold and ivory. Her hair was adorned with pearls. Her eyes, however, held no sparkle, only tears. She didn't belong here, not as his wife, not as a trophy. And then quietly at the back of the palace, a whisper of movement stirred the air. Through a hidden corridor, dimly lit by the moon, William crept along the stone walls. He knew this path, he'd studied it all night, and now it led straight to her. He reached her private chamber, pressed his hand gently against the wooden panel, and pushed. She was there, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The moment she saw him, she gasped. "William." He nodded. "It's time." She blinked. "But the coronation ends without you." She hesitated, only a heartbeat, and then took his hand. They slipped through the corridor, heartbeats in sync, footsteps silent. The palace behind them roared with celebration, but they moved like ghosts through the stone, out through the servants' gate, past the rose garden, and finally into the open fields beyond the palace wall. Maya clutched her shawl tighter as they stepped into the moonlight. "Where are we going?" she asked breathlessly. William didn't answer. He simply pointed ahead, and there it was. A white horse, tall, majestic, waiting at the edge of the forest trail where the road led far, far beyond the kingdom. Maya froze. Her eyes widened. This is the same kind of horse I gave you." William smiled softly. "I know." She turned to him, voice shaking. "You remembered." "I never forgot," he said. "You saved my life once. Tonight, I returned the favor." Maya's eyes welled up. "So this is goodbye." He nodded slowly. "This world isn't ready for us, Maya, but somewhere out there, maybe it is." They stood for a long moment, faces inches apart. The wind brushed gently through her hair. The pearls shimmered in the moonlight. His hand reached up to touch one strand, his fingers trembling slightly. "Live your life," he whispered, "as a free woman, not as someone's shadow." Maya's lips parted. Her heart cracked. She wanted to stay, but they both knew love wasn't always about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting go. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You already did," he replied. A soft tear rolled down her cheek as she climbed onto the horse. Her hands trembled on the reins. "Will you be okay?" she asked. William looked out over the fields, toward the slumbering village he once called home. "I will be," he said. "Starting tonight, I leave the darkness behind." She gazed at him one last time. "Goodbye, William. Goodbye, Maya." With a final breath, she turned the horse. Its hooves kicked gently into the soil, and she was gone, vanishing into the horizon like a dream slipping into dawn. William stood there long after she disappeared, his chest tight, his eyes wet, but his heart finally was at peace. He turned back, walking toward his small home with a new resolve. No more stealing, no more running. He would build something honest. Start again. For her, for himself, for a future that didn't depend on gold, but on peace. And with the first light of morning, William Cross became a new man.